let's talk about the magic of the underpainting, because there is a reason that the technique of underpainting has survived so many centuries of art evolution. Hey guys, sorry I didn't put a video out last week. I was on the edge of severe burnout, so I had to take a week to do nothing but nap and crochet and watch some period dramas. It did wonders for me. I'm still not quite 100% there yet, but I wanted to put this video out for you today. And underpainting, as the name suggests, is the first layer of paint you put down on a blank canvas before you actually get into your rendering. This is mostly a traditional painting technique, and a lot of artists use a very warm, umbery kind of underpainting tone. The primary purpose of an underpainting is either to tint the canvas or to create a value painting. Today we're going to talk all about the underpainting and more specifically how it can completely transform your digital art experience. But also I want to go beyond simply using an underpainting for a value scale or a basic tint to your canvas. Today I want to see how we can use an underpainting to add color variation to your work, to elevate it beyond just your basic temperature zones. We'll start with a basic render of an apple and compare and contrast what it looks like with and without an underpainting, and then we'll start working on a portrait. If you enjoyed this video and learned something today, please remember to like, comment and subscribe. Come say hello on Instagram, Discord and Kara. And that's about it. So without much further ado, let's dive into the magic of the underpainting. So to start, I wanted to do a quick test run and figured an apple is simple enough to do a thorough test without spending a whole day rendering. I started with the most basic sketch and based it off a reference photo that I cannot for the life of me find again. But just to keep things as fair as possible, I made one sketch and duplicated it. With the first one, we're going to do some direct painting as we usually do, and the second one will have an underpainting. So starting with the direct painting, I always like to block in the big shapes first, so we're always coloring within the lines. So the abstract background, the apple and the drop shadow, those are the big important shapes. The lighting isn't too crazy complex at all, just a single light source, a dramatic shadow and a specular highlight. We're not going to worry about realism and textures too much. Our only goal is to try and capture a likeness of the apple with the usual direct painting method. Same thing with the background. I wasn't looking to build a scene, just vaguely capture the colors and a little indication of the texture. Pretty solid, a standard apple. Now for the second version, we're going to start with a warm underpainting. So I started by tinting the background in what would be sort of a burnt sienna tone and set a tint to the canvas. Now for the underpainting, we're pretty much just going to stick to this hue family, going between dark and light browns and oranges. And all we're doing is capturing a value painting. Obviously, I'm trying to keep it as close to the first version as possible in terms of the size and the shape and such, but it's not going to be completely identical because hey, as it turns out, I'm not a machine. Who'd have thunk it? Now that we have a solid idea of the base values, now we can start to add in some of the actual colors. Luckily for us, a lot of the warmth is already in the underpainting, so now we work on balancing it out with some cooler reds and yellow greens. Already you see the difference between the two apples. It's like the underpainting adds this vibrant glow to this apple. It creates this beautiful warmth that looks like it comes from within the apple, like there's so much life in there. Same with the wood in the background, it creates this deep earthiness and it's just so lovely. But let's go a little further because you know I always like to experiment with my art. This mostly started as a way to check how much of the underpainting layer was actually peeking through the overpainted layer. I did a hue shift to really make it visible, and then realized that, hey, that blue hue peeking through the reds is actually incredibly cool. Obviously not realistic or in keeping with the reference, but there is actually something so fun and impressionistic about random colors popping through and messing with realism. So I was like, let's actually do that, but in a non-destructive way. So instead of hue shifting the underpainting layer, I made a copy of it and hue shifted the copy. It's still under the main colors, so it will still only peek through, but having a copy actually really helps you control where the blue pops of color show up, because we get to use the magical power of layer masks. I masked out that blue layer by painting the entire mask black, and then brought back little bits of it by painting in smaller areas of the mask white. It's subtler, and we still see bits of the warm underpainting peeking through as well, but I just feel like this is such a fun look. Beyond realism, beyond just what you see, the weird underpainting blue layer just adds unusual hue variation that you wouldn't think to paint in by hand. I added a bit of a rim light to both apples just for some drama, and here's the comparison. You can tell that the one with the underpainting just seems to have a little more depth, a little more inner glow, even without the blue bits. So now we can take this idea and start working on a portrait. For the main portrait, I wanted to paint something happy and light-hearted. We spent all of last month painting some really dark concepts, and I also spent all of last week just in a void state mentally. But the sun is finally out again where I live, and I really wanted to invite some of that optimism in after a dreary few weeks. So I thought maybe our character is enjoying a nice moment with bright daylight in a field of dandelions. For this one, I did still do a warm underpainting, but started with a much paler ochre tone before blocking the character and flowers in on their own layers. I then went about establishing some base values on the character, and honestly, I already really love the look of this. There is just something about sepia value paintings that feel all old-timey and dramatic. We're sticking to the same overall hue family just for now, just working in some highlights and shadows into that face and hair. I also thought, hey, maybe there could be a giant cloud behind her, a nice framing element to really make her silhouette pop against the background. Just little composition things that I'm realizing come more and more naturally to me the longer I paint. I'm not too fussed about the details at all, because remember, this is just an underpainting. We're going to paint over it. This is just here to establish some values and maybe some hues. I did a quick level adjust to make the shadows deeper, and now we think about contrast. Not only do I want the sunlight that hits her to be direct and super bright, I also really want it to pop against all that warmth. Yes, we're likely going to paint over it, but if we exaggerate the contrast at this stage, it will really peek through the final piece and actually look believable when we soften it out with intermediate tones and hues. So not only did I go super bright with the key highlights, I also decided to go super cool toned and desaturated, so light grays with just the subtlest hint of blue. Because the rest of the painting is so warm, we don't need too much saturation for the highlight to look really, really blue. I then spent a bunch of time just rendering as usual, trying to figure out how the form and light would work, but still keeping it sepia right up until I felt like we had the right values in place. Then I thought, hey, why don't we experiment like we did with the apples? So I grabbed a smoky purple tone and I just started putting it in the shadows, almost like a weird bounce light. The colors don't have to make sense right now. We are simply trying to get a bit of hue variation down so it will peek through the final colors and add some fun little interesting spots in the finished piece. Super cool so far, but let's push it another step further. Remember how we hue shifted with the apple and then revealed bits of the underpainting to add more hue variation? What if we do that here as well? I made a copy of all of the layers and hue shifted each one to look magenta and blue. The same underpainting, just way cooler toned. I then popped the hue shifted layers into a group of their own and just applied a group mask instead of masking out individual layers, which would have taken ages. I really wanted that magenta to pop out right around the purples, kind of like a resonance of the colors in the shadows. And this is looking so good so far. Man, I'm so excited to dive in and paint over this piece. I can just tell it's going to be so pretty. On our next video, we'll look at actually rendering the portrait on top of our underpainting, and I'm really excited to see how it turns out. I hope you'll join me there. But for now, let me know, do you use an underpainting technique in your painting process? Do you plan to moving forward? Comment below because I'm really curious about your painting process. Of course, if you enjoyed this video and learned something today, please remember to like and subscribe to my channel for more art content, and you can come say hello on social media. All the links are in the description below. If you enjoy what I do and would like to support my channel and grab exclusive rewards every single week, including all of my art in 8K and 4K quality, all the step-by-step progress PDFs and complete speed paints from start to finish, as well as my custom brush kit that I made from scratch, and also prints of my work every few months. It is all up on Patreon. Your support on that allows me to keep making all this content for YouTube, so I will leave a link up here in the cards and in the description below, and thank you so much for checking it out. Alrighty you guys, that's about everything for this video, so thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I really hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. If you're looking for another video where we dove into some cool traditional painting techniques but for digital art, you might enjoy this video from a little while ago where we experimented with digital oil painting. We took a look at some brush mechanics and how digital oils work, so I really think you'll enjoy it. I'll leave it here in the outro, make sure you check it out, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye!